I still remember the first time I stood in London, the city of fog and flags, of stories whispered through stone. People called it beautiful. But as I walked those polished streets, I felt something beneath the surface, a shadow. A story no one wanted to tell. They said the sun never set on the British Empire. But they never told me whose blood kept that light burning. This isn't just history. This is truth, raw, buried, and bleeding through centuries. For 400 years, a small island in Europe, Britain, built an empire that covered a quarter of the planet. They called it civilization. They said they brought law, education, and progress. But behind every school they built, there was a field of bones. Behind every railway, a body that never made it home. It began with ships, wooden monsters slicing through the ocean, hungry for spice, gold, and glory. Explorers, they called them. Pirates, some whispered. Queen Elizabeth's men, Drake, Raleigh, men who stole in the name of the crown. They planted flags on lands that already had kings, languages, and gods. And then came the East India Company, a corporation so powerful it became an empire in disguise. At first, they traded. Then, they conquered. They came for silk and tea, but stayed for power and control. In India, they bribed kings, betrayed allies, turned brothers into enemies. They replaced food with profit, forcing farmers to grow crops that couldn't feed their own children. Famine followed. Millions died, and British ships left loaded with gold, cotton, and salt. They called it trade. We call it theft. Across the ocean, they chained Africans and sold them as property. Men, women, children, bodies turned into currency. The British called it business. History calls it what it was, evil. But the world fought back. In America, the colonies rose up and said, "No more." The British laughed. They thought no one could challenge them. 8 years later, they surrendered. A lesson written in fire. You can rule people with fear, but you can't kill their hunger for freedom. In India, rebellion simmered. Soldiers refused to bite cartridges greased with the fat of cows and pigs, a violation of their faith. They revolted. They were crushed. The British called it a mutiny. But it was the first war for independence. And after that, Britain didn't hide behind companies anymore. It ruled openly. The crown took India. The flag spread to Africa, Australia, the Caribbean. Everywhere they went, they took more than land. They took identity, language, faith. They called it the white man's burden, a mission to civilize. But civilization should never need chains. In Africa, they drew lines across maps, dividing tribes, tearing apart kingdoms. They stole diamonds from the ground, gold from the rivers, and children from their homes. In Australia, they declared the land empty, terra nullius. But it wasn't empty. It was sacred. They set prisoners there and erased the people who lived before. And yet, the cracks began to show. The more they conquered, the more resistance they faced. Then came the wars. 2 world wars that demanded the blood of the colonies. Indians fought in Europe. Africans carried weapons through jungles. Caribbean soldiers died on foreign soil. They were promised respect. What they got was racism, lower pay, forgotten names. And when it was over, the colonies asked one question: "We fought and died for you. Now will you let us be free?" The empire said no. But the world had changed. In India, a man in simple cotton stood up. Gandhi. He fought not with guns, but with truth. He told people to stop obeying, to stop feeding the machine. Salt, he said, was freedom. And when he walked to the sea to make it with his own hands, millions followed. In Africa, voices rose. Kenyatta, Nkrumah, Azikiwe. In the Caribbean, freedom songs filled the sugar fields. In every corner of the empire, people began to remember who they were. And one by one, the flags came down. India in 1947. Ghana in 1957. Kenya, Nigeria, Jamaica, the list grew longer. The empire that ruled the world began to crumble, not from invasion, but from truth. But freedom came at a price. When the British left, they didn't leave peace. They left borders drawn in a hurry, slicing through nations, turning neighbors into enemies. In India and Pakistan, partition turned rivers. In Africa, tribes once united were forced into wars they never chose. Even today, those lines bleed. They also left another weapon: language. English became the passport to power, while native tongues were punished and erased. In schools, children were told their words were wrong, their accents inferior. They grew up speaking English fluently and hating themselves silently. And the deepest scar of all? The idea that one color, one culture, one way of thinking was superior. That was the empire's most powerful lie. Even after independence, the empire lived on. In courts, parliaments, schools, and banks, they called it the Commonwealth. But often, it was just control with a smile. Museums in London still display the treasures of others. The Benin bronzes, the Coimbra diamond, without a single sign that says, "This was stolen." Some say, "It's all in the past." But the past isn't gone. It's alive in poverty, in borders, in silence. Yet there's hope. Across the world, people are reclaiming what was taken. In India, in Africa, in the Caribbean, artists, musicians, and writers are rewriting the story. They're teaching their children their real languages. They're telling their truths, not as victims, but as survivors. Because history isn't just what happened. It's what we choose to remember. And so, when I walk through London now, I still see the statues, the marble faces, the flags, but I also hear the whispers of those who built the empire, not for it. Voices that once were silenced, now rising again. They said the sun never set on the British Empire. Maybe that was true, because the fire they lit, the fire of greed and power, burned for centuries. But now, a new sun is rising. One that shines not on conquest, but on truth. Music swells, heartbeat returns, steady, strong. We can't change what happened, but we can decide what we do with the truth. Remember it, speak it, and never, ever let it happen again. If this story opened your eyes, don't let it fade. Share it, because every time the truth is told, the empire falls a little more.